Welcome, everybody. It's Terry Jewston at HR Strategies. Thank you for joining us today on this webcast around implementing a new recruiting solution and why it makes sense even during COVID-19. No, there's a lot of changes that are happening out there based on COVID, and we're going to start to see some real swings and changes that are going to stay with us in recruiting from now on and going forward. So we're going to talk kind of openly and candidly about that. We will be sharing this presentation for those of you who are in attendance later, so no need to ask that. But if you do have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat section of the site. So when I had originally booked to do this webcast on recruiting, it didn't seem like good timing in COVID. And to be quite frank, I thought of pulling the webcast, but instead I thought, for organizations, there's lots of reasons right now why you should be investing in what you're doing in recruiting, whether that's changing processes or whether it's implementing technology, because there is, for once, maybe for the first time in a very, very long time, some actually really great candidates open on the marketplace. So for those of you that have been looking for these candidates and paying unbelievable amounts of money in your recruitment marketing or your agency spends, now's really the time to capitalize on that. So let's go through this presentation. Keep in mind the fact that I've tried to morph it a little bit around the pandemic that we're having now, but it's all obviously very applicable to us regardless of whether COVID was happening or not happening out on the marketplace. And I do hope you're all staying safe. And at the end of this session, I will share with you a couple of links for great educational training content that can help you with telecommuting and COVID-related issues, as well as an employee engagement survey brought to us by Qualtrics that you can use to check the pulse of your organization right now during the pandemic, and just get feedback on how your employees are doing. So those will be available to you at the end of the presentation, as well in the archive that we send you later on. Okay. So let's move through the presentation here now and chat more about recruiting. So this is kind of our agenda. We're going to talk about what's changed, obviously contactless recruiting. We're going to still focus on the major influencers in recruiting around social media, millennials, how to do recruitment marketing, the role artificial intelligence is playing, what other tools can happen, and then a sample demo of both the Qualtrics tool as well as a recruiting platform that may help you just understand the value again of what we can do better in overall recruiting. Okay. So let's talk about how recruiting's changed. Well, in my day, when we were recruiting, we started out with these old newspaper ads, and then along came the web in 2000, and we got a lot of great job boards. There's been a lot of mergers and acquisitions, but some of the true and old ones, and I guess I could put a lot more on these slides, by the way. I'm just giving you a sampling because Monster, I know, has been bought by Randstad, and CareerBuilder is probably better known out there, and Dice certainly still exists. And now when we think of job boards, we're mostly usually thinking of Indeed and Glassdoor out there. But then we started to also start to tweet and Instagram and share our jobs on the marketplace. And then most recently, we've seen an influx of other types of tools that are out there around artificial intelligence or better communication tools or better ways to source candidates. And I just put a very small sampling of logos that some of you may be familiar with or not as we get in talking about specific mediums to help you with recruiting. These are some of the companies that offer those types of services. But first and foremost, for me and my background in HR, it's obviously to try to find one vendor that can do a hire to retire methodology from an overall systems and technology perspective, but sometimes we do have to layer on these best of breed types of solutions. So how has recruiting changed? Well, we're approaching a 30% unemployment rate. The biggest challenge for us in recruiting now is to really understand who's unemployed and looking for work versus laid off, who's just want something to do now until their company comes back and is thriving again in the organization. We don't want to spend a lot of time and effort in recruiting and bringing people on board that we know are going to leave and go back to their employers later, if we're looking for full-time replacements at this point in time. Of course, if you're fortunate enough, depending on how you look at that, in the marketplace to be in a industry right now that is essential and is hiring like crazy to meet up with the demands short term, this is obviously a great opportunity for you to capitalize on these types of layoffs to be able to bring them into your organization. And of course, that's a lot easier said than done because the incentives from the government are making it pretty compelling for people to stay home and not have to work. So I do understand completely that even in food services, there's a huge issue in attracting talent right now. But let's talk specifically about how we're doing our hiring now. And obviously 90% or higher, almost 100% of that is all through remote mechanisms and means. We're no longer meeting for coffee. We're no longer coming into offices and meeting individuals or teams of individuals. Obviously, the amount of people that are going to be using video conferencing is going to be greatly increasing. So in 2019, 47% of companies were dabbling in some type of video conferencing. I'm pretty sure that now 100% of people that are actively recruiting are using some method of video recruiting inside their solution base. So how we have to approach recruiting and how we're going to hire people is going to change, not just in the short term, but I truly believe that it's going to become a norm going forward. So above and beyond just what's happened in recruiting around the pandemic, let's just talk about what's happened in recruiting based on changes and advancements in solutions that are offered in recruiting in general. So right now there's a lot of solutions, and some of those that I showed on that previous screen that are out there to really drive a much more effective user experience, reducing the overall cost for us to be able to recruit, making recruitment and interactions immediate, being able to cast a wider net and be able to attract more candidates to be able to review and look for our organizations. The methods that we are using now for recruiting are a lot more flexible. So the ways that we can engage candidates, the ways that we can communicate with them has changed greatly. And then of course, it makes us also more durable to fluctuations in the marketplace by having these types of solutions in play. And probably more importantly for everybody, it's really dramatically reducing the time per hire. But with technology comes some disadvantages, and part of that is we impersonalize the overall recruitment process for a lot of people. It just doesn't seem as personal as it used to be. Also, because there's so many tools out there, the cost of recruiting can spiral because we keep adding innovation to reduce time to hire, which increases the cost to hire at some points in time from a technology perspective and eats into our margins. Also, if you don't have a great solution with great reporting capabilities, it's difficult to measure the ROI of some of the investments we're making. The other thing is it's not only are we getting a large number of candidates, we may be getting more unqualified candidates. So in this state, when we're talking about, over 250 resumes per job, and for some larger organizations, it's more like an additional 50% applicant flow. So some of our customers may get, 1,000 or 2,000 applicants for each role, and now they're getting, an additional 1,000 resumes, of which they have to weed through those resumes. And that leads into that whole unqualified candidates perspective. The other area is, of course, that it opens up the landscape for competition. So we're, sourcing all of us a pool of candidates, and there's a lot more competition of people fighting for the same candidates. And lastly, it can be a little informal, which to me is very similar to impersonal. Okay. So now, for the first time in years, there should be a race going on for top talent. You know, for as long as I've been in recruiting, which is over 23 years, everybody's telling me, regardless of the unemployment rate, they just can't find good talent. So now we have good talent available, as long as we can weed out who's really looking and who's not looking out on the marketplace. So we've got to really be focusing on capturing and taking advantage of this pandemic to improve the lineup of talent that we have in our organizations, or at least in our funnel. Some of them may not be willing to work again for personal reasons, with people that may be susceptible to COVID-19, and they just can't risk, being out of the office. Obviously, of course, not all jobs require you to be in the office. So if you could hire somebody to work remotely now's the time to do it. We're finding that how organizations have been treating their employees through the pandemic is a direct reflection also for these A players as to their willingness to look for other roles and positions. So if they're not feeling they're getting the support they're needed, if they're feeling their organizations are putting them at a jeopardy of contacting the virus, if they're not supporting their families, if they're not providing them proper details and information, and that to be able to work effectively remote, all of these things are impacting the engagement of the employee and the satisfaction with them and their employers. The other thing, of course, depending on their roles, is a lot of the organizations are finding that they're just not keeping up with the market demands, that the business is hurting too badly based on COVID. And as a result, what's happening with those organizations is this top talent are finding that their companies aren't fluid enough to deal with these changes in the environment, and they want to move to organizations who are perhaps in a better position to weather these types of fluctuations. God forbid this continues again, but there's trending that potentially that could actually happen out on the here, based on who you listen to, of course, in the news. So right now, recruiters should be tracking top talent, and no, bad spelling, Terry, if it's a good time to engage with them, even if they're not ready to hire them. If you're doing proper recruiting, going back to Lou Adler, if you follow him, he's a long time expert in the space. We should always, as recruiters, be knowing who our top potential candidates are from all of our competitors or even non-competitors, and have been keeping them warm in the cycle. Well, now's the time to really ramp up and communicate with those, or to build those funnels and fill those gaps, so that we can have those conversations with these people, because they may very well be ready to make a move. So in order to prepare for that, we really need to have a good story ourselves around our organizations and how we're handling our employees, and whatever product or service it is we're offering, talking them about how viable our corporations are, and how we're going to be able to weather storms like this and support our employees and their families out on the marketplace. Okay. So when we're talking about recruiting solutions, I'm talking more specifically about technology, and this is to show us about transformation. So we need to grab a hold and really start thinking about how we can transform what we're doing from a recruiting perspective. A large proportion of organizations have applicant tracking systems, and if you don't, it now again may be the time to do that. Applicant tracking systems have become a lot more cost effective over time. When I first got into the marketplace and there was 3 main players, the cost to implement applicant tracking system was in the hundreds of thousands, and now applicant tracking systems can go anywhere from free to a few $1,000s to, can get up to the millions, depending on course, how sophisticated in that your organizations are, but more so leaning on the light end of that spectrum from a pricing perspective. We're also seeing that applicant tracking solutions are really just about managing the candidates and making that more effective so that we can move people through the funnel faster and so that we can spend more time on finding the valuable candidates. But most good applicant tracking systems have layered on top of that what we would call recruitment marketing solutions. So that's methods and ways to attract candidates. So if a candidate's thinking of coming to company A or company B, it would give you a foothold above the old other company, perhaps, you know, in just customized landing pages based on jobs or roles or departments or divisions, where they would really see that you value them as an entity or a role inside your organization, as one example. And then, of course, products that have been on the market for a long time to push and disseminate jobs postings out and allow you to be able to manage all those candidates back in your system are still strong play. And we'll talk about some of these in a little more detail as we go through the presentation today. The other surgence that's happened over the last probably 5 years, but I think it's picking up more and more, at least in adoption-wise every year, is the use of artificial intelligence platforms to really help us with what we're doing in recruiting. It's more about streamlining and efficiencies than anything. And again, I'll go into this in more detail. Obviously, CRM software solutions, Avatar has been one of the ones been on the market one of the longest periods of time. But most recruiting solutions are also building in these types of capabilities to manage and negotiate and see and have those types of correspondences with our candidates. So we need to make sure that we're reacting quickly to candidates to make sure that they're getting the experience they want to, so that they will choose our organizations to work for over our competitors. There's a huge momentum on the marketplace from human capital management to human experience management, and it starts from an employee perspective right here in the recruiting realm. So we want to be really cognizant, and a lot of these tools and a lot of things we're going to talk about today are about improving that experience and with, you know, your prospective new hires. Video interviewing, again, I put HireVue up. It's probably one of the longest standing video companies that has been out on the marketplace. But now, if I was had that global ball or that clear crystal ball, I guess I'm trying to say, I would have probably invested in Zoom a long time ago. But there are so many, as we're all experiencing, I'm sure, in day-to-day lives. As I pop, off a go-to from a WebEx to a Zoom to a Teams to a still some Skype out there, Chime. I can't tell you how many different platforms I've been on for meetings day in and day out over the last little while. And a lot of these are really cost-effective solutions and can be built into your recruiting solutions so that you can enable this video interviewing that's going to become a staple in recruiting going forward. We talked about how do you find out, who's truly on the market, and who's just buying time until the economy improves and they may go back to their employer of choice. And a number one way of doing that is using employee referrals. Employee referrals has been one of the most cost-effective means of recruiting for years and years and years. And now there's just another reason to be using employee referrals as a means for finding out who's a good candidate and who's available out on the marketplace. There's been an uptake on employee advocacy software. So similar to, if you're in an industry selling software, for instance, there's a customer advocacy software platforms that have been in existence, and it's like a gamification site where people get points and can win and prizes and be able to give referrals or testaments or speak highly about your organization to prospective employees. And that's moving over from using these types of referral mechanisms for buying software to actually hiring employees. And lastly is the fact that job boards and social postings, I don't see them going anywhere. You know, I've been hearing for probably 15 years that the job boards were going to die. And sure, there's been some mergers and acquisitions and a morphing and a change of them, but I don't see job boards going anywhere anytime quickly. And certainly the mechanisms from social posting going above and beyond, obviously the starting points of, you know, Facebook and LinkedIn to Instagram and Snap and others are also here to stay, and they're going to be constantly added to Twitter, of course, as well. A couple of the other areas that I think are extremely important to have in place are really effective assessment and background check solutions. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on those because, again, these have been staples that have been involved in our industry forever. But I wouldn't be doing any company justice in telling you to invest in other solutions without having the use of these effective tools for helping us to screen out and hire the best possible candidates, and to ensure that, of course, all the data information we have around the candidate is valid and accurate by using these types of tools as well. So this is an old slide, one we used in the past, and this is probably going to have some changing feedback based on what's happened with COVID-19. But basically, it's telling you still that social media and social sharing are the ways that we still need to go and focus in order to attract candidates into our candidate pool. So we can't lose sight of that. As I said, some things are new and some things aren't. And I would say that's one of the ones that really hasn't changed. We're finding that, you know, close to half the world's population are on some form of social media. 84% of organizations are using them. 79% of job applicants have used some type of social media to apply for jobs. And even, you know, we could put another statistic in here around the increasing number of people that are starting to apply for jobs on mobile as well. And we're going to show you a bit of mobile coming up later. So the reasons, again, for social media and social sharing, this isn't really new, is, you know, trying to find more passive candidates, you know, trying to help you improve and increase your brand recognition, you know, more targeted types of recruiting based on specific skills or competencies that we need to have. Also, leveraging these is also something we should be doing with our employee referrals. Allowing potential candidates to connect and understand us as an organization. Again, that's part of and in parallel with culture and brand. We're going to spend a bit more time specifically on culture and brand coming up as well. And then creating these types of online communities, and that would lead back to even bringing back into our workforce as alumni as a possible mechanism for recruiting as well. We can't forget about the millennials. They're big in our workforce now, and they're going to be even bigger by 2025. And of course, their use of social media is second to none. So this is why, if you haven't developed a really strong social media presence, maybe this lack of our lag, or hopefully in some cases from a recruiting perspective, gives you some breathing space to be able to really hone in and develop processes around social media. It would be important. So for millennials in particular, employer brand is one of the big things. And again, that's part and parcel with culture. So your goodwill, your community outreach, how green you are. Employee ambassadors, again, going back to that, you know, employee advocacy platforms that are being used out there, and employee referral programs. You know, how great your online recruiting presence is and how easy you make it for them to be able to apply. Again, the real uptake in mobile here happening. I did find this overall slide presentation from a blog called Everyone Social. So I thought, you know, instead of recreating the wheel, I would just repurpose their information here. So there's a lot of data, and they link to where they found them. So, you know, so here's some employer brand stats that you might want to know about. So 90% of companies believe employer brand and Reputation can positively or negatively impact revenue. So that's not just hiring, it's revenue, right? But not very many people are actually monitoring the impact of that. 78% of job candidates say the overall candidate experience they get is an indicator of how the company values its people. So again, that goes back to the employee experience that we talked about and how important every touch point in the recruiting process is for you. And beyond that, and that's why now organizations are investing in not human capital management software, but human experience management software, because they want to make every touch point, whether it's the technology you give them, the work environment that they have, it's all so important. Next is when making a decision to where apply for a job, 84% of job seekers say the reputation of the company as employer is important. 9 out of 10 of candidates would apply for a job when it's from an employer brand that's actively maintained. So we've got to be keeping up and changing and updating the data and information around us. So 50% of candidates say they wouldn't work for a company with a bad reputation, even with a pay increase. So again, this is equating to the fact we've seen a huge shift around experience management, culture, as being equal drivers to money, as well as the capability to learn and develop in organizations. So turnover can reduce by 28% by investing in employer brand. And obviously employer brand isn't just the brand, it's actually doing what we say in the brand. And I am a true believer, and even when we look at Qualtrics a little bit later on, I really believe that if you ask your people and make minor changes around culture and engagement in your organization, you can influence your brand. So you can say, you know, how do we do on, you know, great are we at, you know, helping the community, and then you can constantly be promoting, you know, how you're donating to the food bank, done work share programs, all these things that you're doing, sponsoring teams and events and things like that, so you can build your culture out. 80% of talent acquisition managers believe employee branding is a significant impact. Of course, negative reputation costs companies. Anyways, there's just so many good statistics here, all of which tell us that we need to be taking employee brand very, very seriously out here on the marketplace in order to impact why individuals would want to work for our organization. So again, we'll share this slides and statistics with you so you can read a little more leisurely and dive in and look at some of the results later on. So when one of the ways we're going to actually leverage brands can be in recruitment marketing. So when I think of recruitment marketing, I think of tools that help us disseminate our jobs and information to catch a wider net of candidates, ideally, you know, targeted, specific, and skilled talent is the best type of talent we want to get, or passive job seekers for those of you that you know, are still thinking in those terms. And part of that is by these career branded career pages. So you want to have specific landing pages based on roles, departments, or distinct hiring types. You know, students versus professionals, engineers versus IT, and so on, and have data and information on all those pages that are relevant to those specific types of hires. There's proven statistics that show if an A candidate is applying at 2 or 3 different companies that they're shortlisted with, the chances are they would go and work for an organization that shows they truly understand the value of their position in the organization, which is why these branded landing pages are so important. Obviously, so our referrals, we need to really be promoting and doing referrals out there. Most organizations have some type of a paid for referral program. I know some students that made a full-time living out of referring people just on LinkedIn to companies that had external referral programs. By doing the sourcing and finding and tracking for these candidates and pushing the candidates to them. So we can't forget about the value of marketing out through referral mechanisms. And then, of course, search engine optimization, both organic and paid for, still big key players in helping us with recruitment marketing. So these are some of the top sources where we gather information before applying to jobs. So we're still seeing that people are coming direct to company websites. I was surprised a bit on the statistic around search engines being less. I still think search engines are #1 spot for us to go to. But this just gives you an understanding of the conversion rates. Some of this can be skewed in some systems, applicant tracking systems. They actually ask the candidate to choose how they heard from your job. And if you've got a very long pick list, anything over 5 places, the candidates are most likely to just pick one in the top 5. So we're not going to get really good statistics around that. That's one of the reasons the patented technology that I've seen in the SuccessFactors product suite is advantageous because it targets and source codes them based on that patented technology. So we don't have to ask them for that information. We know specifically where they came from. This slide, when I first saw the statistics and it was shared with me by a team member, I thought, oh, well, this really doesn't seem to be anything too compelling. I was thinking it's the machine gun apply on job boards, but actually what I thought was interesting is that people are starting to be much, much more selective on where they apply. And that's how the statistic backs that is in the past, when you used to go somewhere to apply for a job like Career Builder or Monster, you conceivably, if there was thousands of postings, would apply for that 20 to 40 plus jobs to find a job. And now what we're finding is people are being much more selective and targeted in who they're searching for and who they're going to apply to. And maybe that's why the statistics on the previous page around companies, websites, and portals has increased dramatically, is because as an A player in the marketplace, we probably know who we want to work for, and we go specifically to their sites and look for open positions and sign up for alerts specifically there for that. Okay. So here's some, again, where we're finding the recruitment dollars being spent, and where applications are coming from and where hires are coming from specifically. Just to let you know, there is still that spread of money as well as success amongst a number of vehicles from a recruitment perspective. So how do we improve these conversion rates? So these statistics say that we need to really improve that candidate experience. You're going to get sick of hearing that today. And that, because 70% of job seekers say that they feel this is indicative of how the company treats its people long term, right? We also see that 58% of those that have a negative impression would never apply again for a role inside your organization. But probably more importantly to your company is the fact that we'd never use your product or service again. So how we treat our candidates isn't just going to impact our hiring capability, but could actually improve the the selling and sales capability of your organizations, right? And then again, the conversion rate is higher if the candidate experience is better, then they're 38% more likely to accept the job offer. So that's a huge number and a huge statistic. So we want to make sure that everything we're doing in recruiting is as effective as possible. So let's go in and look now a little bit at some of the trends and some of the things that are happening out there to help us improve the time and effectiveness of recruiting and creating a better candidate experience. So artificial intelligence has really taken off over the last 5 years and continues to grow. More and more organizations entering the marketplace. So recruiters are saying, 76% of them at least are saying that they believe artificial intelligence will have an impact on recruiting that is as significant. So what does AI do in recruiting? So it improves the candidate experience, it reduces the time to hire, and it reduces the cost to hire. I can't think of three of the things that probably as a recruiter we're not asked continually to report on to our executives than these three metrics. You know, besides maybe the quality of hire, which we could argue AI does that too, because it can actually automatically go through and screen and find better quality candidates. So if we are fortunate enough to use technology to also increase the number of resumes we have, we can use artificial intelligence to go in and score the candidates against the job requisitions to find those better candidates and speed up the recruiting process, but at the same time, find better quality candidates. And they can do that better than we can because we're looking for specific keywords. And in robotics and robotic process automation and artificial intelligence, they can do similar things like we do with Boolean searches, but on a much faster and more effective level. So some of the key features that we're seeing artificial intelligence used is the ability for people to easily text to apply. So especially for retail, food services right now, this would be you know, an easy win for you. That anywhere that you have a store, you have a screen in the window that says, you know, text, you know, 22222 to apply, and then they can pick the job that they're applying for, and they can go through the whole apply process. The other thing we talked already about is the screening out of candidates. So we talked about how it can help you with that. They can also automatically schedule interviews, so it can look at your internal calendar and propose dates and times and have them accept those types of meetings right off the bat. They're also using chatbots for better user experience, as well as to automate the answers of questions people might have around jobs, like, you know, what does your company do for benefits? How competitive is your compensation? Do you invest and learn and train and learn and develop people? So instead of waiting to have those conversations, they can get that data and information, which helps them get more engaged and more excited about those potential opportunities. A lot of organizations are doing some form of mass onboarding. You know, even with an onboarding solution, mass onboarding can still be very cumbersome. So using the capability of artificial intelligence or robotics process automation, we can improve dramatically the time it takes to do those times of recruiting. I know one of the examples at SAP SuccessFactors is they onboard 27,000 people a year, and they have to pull data from multiple systems. So they created robotics to be able to do that, to streamline it. So that's an example of that. And then the other thing is moving of employee data to other systems. Well, I told you earlier that I really strongly recommend you get with one solution provider that can do the end-to-end hire and to retire. If for some reason you don't, and you have to, every time you hire somebody in your recruiting solution, you have to move it to your HRIS system and maybe other systems like your benefit systems and solutions and so forth. You know, AI and robotics process automation, again, can streamline and automate that for you, removing the complication around integrations and them breaking over time. So those are some examples. So next, we're talking here about the mobile apply. Again, we talked already about the big uptake on that, especially with millennials. So we do have to make sure that you're using and enabling the ability for your organization to accept people to apply seamlessly through mobile phones and iPads versus traditional means. And this is the statistics around that to back that here as well. So we did talk about human experience management, revolution in the movement away from HCM to being able to facilitate and look at data and information specifically on the experience. So here, what we're showing you is how we're going to merge multiple things together in an overall recruiting process. So we started, if I just go back, we started here and we're using a food service as an example. So here we are looking for an overall cashier. We can see their required skill set. Then here's the required qualifications that we're looking for. And then we can help them even understand here what the total compensation amount is here. So they're saying that the industry average is between 9.20 and 13.76 an hour, and that they're paying a premium specifically here. So if that plays to your advantage, you could use that. The other areas we scroll further down here is that we can help them understand, because we know that growth is super important to them inside their organization. So we can say that, you know, if you start as a cashier, here's the trajectory that other people inside our organization have taken. So as I talked to you earlier about is, we know that learning and developing the ability to progress in an organization is super important. So here's an example of how we bring in career development right into our overall recruiting application. Other things that are important to the candidate and make the user experience effective is bringing in this type of data around, like, how long will it take you to ride your bike, get on a streetcar, or a subway, or drive to our particular organization. So we can see that data and information here as well inside the system and the platform. Okay. And then the ability for them to apply is what we call quick apply, where, sorry, this is scrolling a little bit out of my control here, is they can do that quick apply where they only need minimal information and upload the resume. And then again, we want to always ask them how their experience was. So we can bring in that whole experience management right here for you. And then again, we can link to other pertinent data and information. So videos, and then some of the benefits and data and information that we have here. So this is really important for us to be able to create that candidate experience, and making sure that the moments that matter are most effective. And we need to bring this right through even to onboarding. And this is just us helping them understand through onboarding their goals and what we expect of them inside the organization. Okay, so I just wondered if there were any more specific questions about that in here. And again, this is bringing in the goals, the career development, how we're progressing on our skills, and using the machine learning in this particular case to assign specific learning to help them improve so they can meet those overall career objectives as well inside the organization. And then we're constantly looking for that feedback so that we can capture how we're doing, both for candidates during the onboarding process, as well, obviously, for people inside the organization to take pulse surveys around other areas of ways that we're touching employees, whether we're doing full-on engagement surveys or pulse surveys inside the organization. So I said that I would also share with you some what we call COVID-19 complementary tools. So here's a slide with links to those that we'll share with you coming up later. And now what I want to do is just spend a little bit of time and maybe show you a little bit about those career branded sites and a feedback example from Qualtrics. And this is your ability to do a remote pulse survey with them as well. So hopefully you'll stay and enjoy that. We wouldn't be able to do what we do today inside and have these webinars without our sponsors, and SAP SuccessFactors is the sponsor for these webcasts for HR strategies. So I've logged in here to the Qualtrics dashboard. I'm looking specifically at onboarding, but you can see I could also look at overall engagement surveys and that. But we wanted to focus more specifically on what's happening in a recruiting related feature today. So when I'm asking those surveys, like you saw that I did in that phone mock-up that I had, in order to spare you the time of going through that in the system, you can see that I can come in and I can look based on role, based on team, based on manager, and based on the training, how likely the organization is to be promoting my company out there in the organization. We can also come down and see onboarding experience specific data and information. So as we mouse over here, we can be able to see specifically where we're negative, neutral, and positive inside the organization around our onboarding experience and engagement. And then we can slice and dice the detail and information down so we can see further how we're doing with our onboarding metrics. We can see over time how we're encapsulating and doing, and then we get valuable data and information for us here, kind of in a quadrant role, where we can see how the onboarding experience went. So here where we did well is understanding responsibilities, find the roles is interesting, that we got trained effectively, the manager is effective. We have accurate role descriptions. Where we've got some negative feedback is, we're not really understanding our objectives. We didn't receive the tools and resources quickly to do our jobs. We're not getting enough one-on-one time inside the organization to do this type of so this is information that we can get to really understand what our onboarding process is like, and we can slice and dice this data and information based on age, based departments, because we know not every manager can be different. Again, we could base it based on gender, so we just wanted to see what the impact would be from female versus male. We have that capability here in the system to view that. Again, the onboarding experience may be different, and maybe we have different processes for senior leaders versus managers. And maybe this is a good reflection on if we built out better programs or processes that we should be utilizing these throughout the organization. And as we change all these headers, so does the information that we receive on the bottom is all impacted out here. We can also get, text sentiment. So if we're asking for free-form fields, we can be able to analyze that data as well in here. This is some of the data and information that we're seeing in the system around how we're doing with the text responses. I think I have it better shown on this manager's dashboard, the use of texting in here. Let me just quickly run over here and show you this feedback. So this is from an overall engagement survey perspective, where we can see consistently where we need to change data and information inside the system. And then if I go to text analytics, that's probably what I forgot to do on the last page, we can show the data and information as it populates specific to the text scores in the system. Looks like somebody turned my data off. Let's go back and try it from an onboarding. Text analysis. Go. But first you don't succeed, try again. So here is the topics we asked them about, and then here's the sentiments that we got. So again, we can see what's positive, mixed, and what's negative. So how they saw career progression, communication, compensation, managers, and our tools and enablement. So can analyze that and do wordles so that we know specifically, based on comments we're getting, how we're performing as well. Okay. The other thing that I wanted to spend a bit of time on showing you was how important we talked about mobile being. And maybe what I can do here is just look at a couple job sites. So these are specific career marketing or branding sites that are available that some of our clients have done of SAP SuccessFactors. And what I like about Amtrak is it makes it quick and easy for people to find a job based on locations, but they do a really good job at what we call these featured or company branded sites. So if I was interested specifically just in an engineer's job or role, I could come in here and see why it's important as an engineer to work at Amtrak, an own video, and then only engineering specific jobs would be here. on the Amtrak site as well. So we can do the same thing here with our mobile phones. So if we want to come in and look at the same type of data and information, as my mobile phone loads here, we can see the impact of being able to easily take this page and have it work for us on a mobile phone as well. The other thing that we can do, and that maybe Harley Davidson does as well, is view at jobs by location. So we can specifically detail out where jobs are by location by putting that type of a map in it. And be cognizant, I'm working remote, so my internet is not as great as normal. So there are some delays, which probably caused my problems with my Qualtrics as well. But here's that Amtrak's page right here on my actual mobile phone. So I can come in here and I can still see those specific featured jobs and be able to come in and view, and I can sign up for alerts right here or see all jobs. So again, if I went into the engineering specific jobs, it resizes and gives me the capabilities and the same video and the same experience. And if I want to come in and look at that job, you can see I can share it out on our social media, and I could go in and apply for that specific job here as well. Okay, so these are all great ways of creating these branding sites. These also, we use these career landing sites to create what we call passive job seeker landing pages. So we could create a page with a white paper, for instance, on the average salary of an engineer. They would Google find it, and engineering jobs would be underneath it. You can use these for career fairs, so we can track and see how effective career fairs are. There's lots of modes for that. Anyways, we're getting up near the end of the hour. I want to thank everybody for coming. Hope they found some useful information, or at least that it backed what you've learned out on the marketplace. I hope that all of you will stay safe and do make the most out of your remote time to improve and adapt to changes that are going to stick with us from a recruiting perspective. And if I can be of any help to you, or if you want more data and information specifically on any of these tools, we're certainly here to help you. And I'll just display my information for you here. And again, Terry Houston, Global Vice President, HR Strategies Consulting. Thanks again, and have a great day.